So, yeah, Brett, great introduction. Appreciate it. Thanks, Beyond Clean team, for allowing us to be a part of this. I know Jenny and I are very excited. And then also thanks to Carl Storrs for offering up such a great event. We just wanted to throw this out there. Jenny and I really prefer a really interactive discussion. I know Beyond Clean does a killer job at doing this. So, please, we'll have a couple poll questions. Love to hear your feedback. Any questions that you have coming up during the conversations, please put those in. I think Brett will help us maybe even integrate some of those into the discussion so we can make it interactive. Let me just go through a quick agenda here on what we're going to cover. Brett gave a great introduction on what this is, but we're going to hit some objectives. We'll do some introductions with Jenny and myself. We're going to focus on why borescope inspection, so the big why behind it. We're going to talk, or Jenny's going to talk about what your data is telling you with borescopes. We'll talk a little bit about where to look with these borescopes. We're going to go over inspection borescope workstations, so specifically the setup on these workstations. We'll go through a little bit on the borescope process, which this is kind of the big kahuna. This is the very important slide on just walking through how to improve and some great nuggets on process with relation to borescopes. We'll hit up what to look for with these borescopes, what you might find inside of lumens. We'll give a little insight into what's coming in the borescope market, and a little bit about what to do next. How can we take this information and bring it back to your department and finish it up with some questions and answers. So real quick on the objectives, 4 objectives. We're going to identify some key resources and data points for building a strong case for borescopes. We're going to identify 3 specific factors on borescope setup that can really enhance your success with the borescope. We'll identify 5 tips to enhance your borescope process. And then on the 4th here, understand from Jenny Gibbs how we can use borescopes to improve 3 things: organizational quality metrics, then specifically a little bit more on department quality metrics, and then 3rd, safe patient care and quality patient outcomes. So just a quick intro for me. Claris Medical, we're out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. We are a borescope manufacturer, and I want to disclose that. I am super passionate about what you all do in this department. I think it is the most important job. It's something that my hats go off to you all on what a great job done. It is challenging, but the attitudes you all bring is something that really sticks out, and I love doing what I'm doing. What I want to really, though, put up on a pedestal here, Jenny Gibbs, she's out of Grand Forks, North Dakota, works in All-True in their All-True Health Systems. So we get to meet a lot of borescope users in our line of work. What I want to point out about Jenny is she is just an incredible attitude. It seems like she's developed a great team around her and a lot of great processes. So I love the opportunity to just collaborate with her on this project. She is a borescope super user. Jenny, why don't you kind of go through these bullet points, because I think people will really want to hear a little bit more about what you've done.
Sounds great. And thanks for the invitation. I'm really excited to talk to you all today. And first, I want to clarify, I am not personally the borescope super user. It is my department and the technicians that I have that are the borescope super users. But us as an organization, that is a true statement. So we've been doing instrument borescope inspection for over 8 years. We started with optical ones right on our instrument assembly tables, and then on our decontam manual on our decontam sinks. Then 5 years ago, we as an interdisciplinary team decided that we really needed to be as much compliant with ST91, the version at the time, but then what was coming. And if we're going to lift a bunch of stuff or do some things, let's do it right. So 5 years ago, we brought in high definition video borescopes, some of the earliest on the markets at the time, and made that as a standard process for our endoscope reprocessing. And we lifted an every scope, every time inspection process. So we've been doing that for over 5 years. We reprocess about 8,000 flexible endoscopes annually. So we have lots of data. If you do that math, we have lots of borescope inspection data at our fingertips, and our technicians are very skilled in this area. We as an organization have centralized endoscope reprocessing. So all flexible endoscopes, all high-level disinfection is done under the CSD umbrella. And I will clarify that I say CSD because we're a central sterile department. It's a title we came up with because we're a combined SPD and central supply. So we build a total case cart for the OR. Our organization, we have 3 main areas that we service with sterile processing technicians. One is our main hospital, which is a level 2 regional medical center, 16 operating rooms total across. We have an outpatient surgery center. We manage all of the clinic endoscope reprocessing, all of the outreach endoscope reprocessing, and then also the endoscopy center, our outpatient endoscopy center, but also our inpatient emergent, urgent hospital-based endoscopy platform as well. So we do a lot of scopes. Basically, every time a type of flexible scope that you'll see, those entities we have done and they're under our umbrella. That's part of the reason why our numbers are so high. So urology, ENT, pulmonary, GI, surgery, the whole kit and caboodle we have here. We have worked very diligently on our endoscope process, and we have received under 3 separate surveys since I've taken over the department, and specifically lifting the borescope, our flexible endoscope reprocessing quality platform. We have received 3 best practice call-outs or recognitions from the Joint Commission under 3 separate surveys as we are doing best practice. So we're very proud of that. The technicians are very proud of that. And yeah, it's all great. It's good. So I do have some information maybe to help some other people who are in different parts of their journey.
Yeah, incredible, Jenny. It's, so obviously you know why she's here today. We're going to dig a lot deeper into all this stuff and learn more from her. So we're going to have our first poll question here. So I just want to get an idea just to keep this interactive. Does your department have a borescope? And we'll take just a little bit of time to have this go through. And Brett, if you want to chime in on when you think we should continue to move, let us know. All right. Whoops. Look at this, really quick responses. So yeah, this is great. Numbers climbing even a little bit here. So we got about 58%, just over half, which I certainly applaud a lot of the attendees here on having a borescope in the department. Love to learn more, and hopefully we have some good information to share with you moving along. All right. So why borescope inspection? Obviously, this has developed a lot over the recent years. We could spend hours just talking about this slide alone, but I want to use this slide mainly as just a resource for you. So these slides will be available. The goal is just to have this resource available. These are reference points on where we see borescopes mentioned in certain guidelines, as well as other documents that your team might find relevant. So ANSI AMI ST79, there's section 7.6.4.5. Where there's reference to borescope inspection, as well as in the 2020 amendment, more stronger language on borescopes on Amendment 2, and specifically Section 8.2. In ST91, Section 12.4.2, and then more recently in 2021, the Section 7.8.3, and also the Annex E, where borescopes do get mentioned more. A lot of discussion within this past year's, especially conference season, where we've been getting a lot of feedback of people recognizing the 2022 November flexible endoscope reprocessing guidelines update. So specifically the cleaning, verification, and inspection section is where you'd want to reference to learn more about the Borescope guidelines discussions there. So another kind of surprise for some people is these IFUs. There are 2 IFUs that do call out lighted magnification, and specifically inside the lumen. And so we kind of read that as borescope language. So Stryker and Arthrex do mention this visual inspection inside of the lumen or cannula. Something that we do sometimes catch groups off guard with that kind of language. I want to reference that so you have that as a placeholder. And lastly, I think why Jenny and I are here and why we're so passionate too about this is about borescopes is, you know, a borescope's a great tool now to inspect the other 50% that you've been missing all these years, right? You spend so much time developing an external inspection process. Now we got the tool to look inside. So Jenny, why don't you take us through a little bit? Data seems to really drive a lot of your department decisions. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're looking at?
Absolutely. Data does drive our decisions. As healthcare organizations, we need to have our decisions driven by data. We can't go on a feeling, a want, I want, or this or that, or it has to be driven on that data. And I would really challenge people to leverage their interdisciplinary team. You'll hear me saying that a lot. Infection prevention, regulatory, risk management, surgical and procedural leadership, your vendor partners, the IFUs, like there is interdisciplinary people and resources out there, and you know, as Andy referenced on the last slide. So really how I interpret it is all of that regulatory, the standards, okay, why is that there? Well, that's there because of my internal data. So my internal data supports those decisions or what people are looking at. So the first one is potentially surgical site infections. Are you at the table? Do you know your rate of surgical site infections in certain specialties? Have you done a root cause analysis as an interdisciplinary team with sterile processing at the table, looking at specifically for this conversation, your devices? Are there trends in devices, trends in instruments that are happening there, patterns? Is it cases where shavers are used? Is it endoscopy procedures? There's just, or flexible scopes in a procedure, patients in even, so just those surgical site infections, hospital acquired conditions, things like that. So all of these, I challenge you to look through this lens for this conversation of can the borescope impact that, and what information and data is the borescope going to provide you? Second one, compromised sterility events. If you are running a sterile processing department and bringing up instruments up to the SPD, you are having compromised sterility events. Some of those are debris or biological residue left on instruments. And so you think about your cannulated items, your reamers, your, suction units, things they put a stylet through and something falls out. That is happening out in the industry. So what is that root cause? What tools do you need to make sure that never happens again? So look at those, pay attention to those contaminated events that are happening. Cleaning verification, pass fail rates. How many items are you getting soiled when from decontam in your assembly area when somebody goes to blow it out with air to inspect it as they're assembling it? Those shouldn't happen. So how do you get rid of those? What is your rate? How do you need that? How do you help the techs do the job that they want to do? Your cleaning verification tests. So if you do residual protein testing, what are those pass fail rates? Is it by technician? Is it by device? How do you leverage that data and make decisions? And how can a borescope help? If you have something that keeps failing, have you looked inside to see if there's a chunk of something in there? Is there a defect inside? That all goes into that. Scope surveillance culturing, flexible endoscope culturing. We should be doing your scope surveillance, culturing to see if you have that they're clean and safe and ready to use. There's a protocol, AMI ST91. That's all I need to say about that. But what's your rate? How are you doing? Have you done a root cause if you have a positive culture? Do you have a set amount of positive each times, or are you to the point where you don't have any positive cultures? We've been able to impact that significantly, very significantly at our organization. And then flexible endoscope damage. What are those repairs? What are the types of repairs? Are you having total failures, fluid invasion, things where there is something? How did that get into the inside channel of the scope? Do you have micro cuts in there? How do you see those channel damage on the inside? And you can even break it down by type of procedure. flexible endoscopes that have a lot of instrumentation through them are going to have a lot more damage than ones who don't. I always thought the colonoscopies would, like I would have a higher fail rate on my colonoscopes because it's, stool. Well, no, actually I have a much higher, almost 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1 failure rate on my gastroscopes because they're putting so much instrumentation and damming those interior linings. So it's just, you really have to pay attention to your data and use that to leverage your case for a borescope.
A lot of powerful information there. I'm sure we'll unpack more of that too in just the slides to come. So where to look? I want to hit this real quick. Obviously, we're focusing on flexible endoscopes today, but it's important to note that there's other devices that we see borescopes getting used in, and really it's any kind of lumened or narrow channeled device. I want to give you a couple ideas here on common devices that we see. So obviously endoscopes, we mentioned the shaver handpieces and their IFUs. We have suctions, reamers. Those are just devices that we do see as hot topics. And then, just as a little placeholder here, we are looking for things that obviously don't belong. All right, so inspection workstations. We're going to talk specifically about setup on this. So setup is key for success. You know your department better than we do. Jenny knows her department inside and out. So what I think is important to notice here is that there are options for borescope locations. We see the dirty side, clean side, or both. And there's pros and cons to each of those sides. So Jenny, tell me a little bit about how your department landed on where the borescope location is and what that means to you.
It really was driven by our internal processes and goes back to that interdisciplinary team and what was going to be our standard of care. Every scope, every time, every patient deserves a clean device, whether it's an instrument or a flexible endoscope, and no patient isn't worthy and not worthy of those double checks. So we took it very personally and very linear that way. So when we set it up, we started small. This was a progression. You don't have to do this big buck all at once. I'm turning this all on and I need 20 borescopes. You can start small. You can start with what is the most high risk, what is your greatest risk mitigation, what's your most at risk, high risk scopes for this instance. So for us, the very first scope place we lifted was our hospital program where we were doing those complex scopes that was the ERCPs, the EUSs, the pulmonary scopes, those things that had the high risk. And now in ST 91, it is very strong language that you need to do that cleaning verification on those. So in dirty, so on the dirty side, we went through, is it an inspection tool? It is. And it's, for us, we think of it as a verification of the manual clean. We want to catch that stuff real time as it's happening. We all have the mentality, it has to be clean. Otherwise, it's not going to be disinfected and sterilized. So we have to do that cleaning verification. And we have a 2-step program. And one of that is the borescope inspecting that internal channel. And the other part is residual protein testing. So you'll actually see one of these pictures. The top 2 is our inspection station in decontam, the top 2, where we have our computer, the borescope's over to the left. We cut it off on the picture, but you can see her using it right in front of the computer. And we do our residual protein test. If either of those fail, we reject it and we put it back through. So I'm getting into some of the process stuff, but that process drives where you have it. On the clean side, again, it's part of instrument assembly. It's part of that verification that set is ready to, I'm assembling it, I am verifying that is clean and ready to use. So for the instrument side, we have it, again, in our instrument assembly area, whether it's an inspection station, whether it's at the table, different people do different things. It depends on how many you have. If you have one, then you're going to have a centralized inspection station. But really make sure that it's easy to use, and these are kind of the key factors for our success. We made sure we looked at the placement. We involved the team. Where was it needed for the process? Where did the team want it? Where they were going to use it? We don't want it to be hard for them because then they're not going to use it. Also, just the technology, that it's easy for them to use. It's simple, it's concise, it's a natural part of their process. Like in decontam, you can see they have to go right by it. They can set the scope. Everything is set up there for them to be successful. The third big key for success is that it adds value to the technicians. They get to do the right thing. They get to do a full inspection. They know that there is stuff in there. It's a should. They don't have to say, well, I don't get to do that. I have to do that. I want to do that. So for them, that value added to them, that they're able to do the type of job that they want to do. And just please remember, it's okay to start small. It's okay to start small. If you don't have one, get one. They'll naturally progress to where it needs to be. And you need to figure out internally what's your biggest pain point and what's your biggest risk, and where, again, what your data is telling you where you need a one first.
Yeah, I love that. I think one thing that sticks out, Jenny, what you're sharing that's also very helpful from the other groups we talk with is, finding a spot that you believe starts is a great place to start. It's okay to change it. As you get the Borescope implemented, you might learn some things where the location or something with regards to the setup improves the use, makes it easier to use, and just more successful for the operator of the Borescope. So I guess the only pieces that I would add to this are just Borescopes are probably one of the more fragile pieces of devices that are getting used at these workstations. So, my suggestion is don't let it be an afterthought on making space that's protected for the Borescope. Jenny, do you got any thoughts on that at all that you want to share?
Yeah, so in Deacon Tam, like I said, if we cut off the picture, but over to the left of the computer, there's space between our sink and our inspection counter that we put in. And the Borescope kind of tucks in and hangs all the way down there, because that's a long one, because it's for endoscopes. So it's 3 feet long or whatever it is. And so, it can hang freely, it cannot be damaged. Andy, if you flip to the next picture, the next screen, you can see this is our the assembly table is not ours, but that's an understanding. It's kind of tucked over to the side and protected. The other two pictures that you're looking at is our instrument inspection station. So we have it right by where our instrument grade air is, because we only have one place for air to come and blow out the instruments, kind of right by our pass-through window. And again, we've got, if you can see in the one picture on the bottom, it's hard to see, but I have it circled in blue there. We just have a little piece of tubing and the end of rubber tubing that we use for protection and different things. And we have it zip tied to the thing, and we just stick the end of the tip in there. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be all of this. It just has to be cognizant so people know it's always safe and ready to use. And you'll see we have like alcohol wipes there, because again, you don't want cross-contamination. And so again, there is a process to cleaning the Borescope and wiping it off in between instrumentation as well. So we just kind of have everything simply there for them that they need.
Yeah, love the visual. I again want to just remind listeners, if you have questions, regarding setup, or even this next couple slides on process with Borescopes, definitely plug those in, so that way we can make sure to address those with a super user like Jenny available to help us guide through those. We got our second poll question here. We have about 10, 15 seconds. Where is your team using the Borescopes? Now we just talked about some of the, it's okay to use it, but where we see it is clean side, dirty side, or both. Let us know where you're using your Borescope. These start coming in. It's kind of fun to watch. Looks like we got more clean users than others. We'll give it another couple seconds. All right, doesn't appear to be moving, but clean side, as well as people not using Borescopes yet. So great opportunity. So I'm hoping they're taking a lot of notes. All right, so Borescope process. This is the slide where we want to spend the most time with you on. We think that there's a ton of value to add to this. Inspection frequency is the top thing that we want to talk about. So you shared all the statistics, Jenny, on how many Borescope inspections you are doing. Wow, that's a lot. And so I just wanted to kind of learn about your frequency, how you got there. Did you start there? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
For flexible endoscopes, we started there. We as a department, interdisciplinary team, again, this is our standard of care for our patients that are having an endoscope procedure. whether it's in their lung, in their GI tract, in their, a urology procedure, everyone deserves a clean device. So how could we get to the point where we could verify that that was part of the manual validation of clean dirty? So for us, it's our standard of care, and that's where we really focus on having it in the decontamination part as part of that validation. We also use it as an audit process as well. So we do a little bit of both. We do every scope every time when we reprocess it, but we do also do some auditing of different things or inspections when they come in. When they come back from repair, we look at them. When we get in a loaner, we look at them. So it's a little bit of both. We could look at if our data told us we needed to do some different types of audits, then we would flex and look at that and maybe inspect it at a different frequency somewhere else. So for us, we do that. We reprocess some of our critical access partners. We do some of their inspection points and their scope culturing for them with some of the critical access hospitals that we have. And for them, they do it when they do their scope surveillance culturing. So they send them to us every month. They don't have a borescope, but once a month we do the culturing, we do the cleaning, we verify inside and look at that damage. So again, the frequency is really about what works for your organization and what you have the ability to do.
Yeah, so great summaries there. Let me highlight a couple of those. So if we're looking with an audit hat on auditing either the condition of these devices or how certain reprocessing steps are working, you mentioned potentially a new baseline of a brand new device to coming into the department, where a borescope inspection might be helpful to establish what that device looks like brand new. You mentioned loaners in and out, inspecting those as they come into your possession. Repairs devices going out for repair, coming back in, establishing kind of what that baseline out and baseline in might be is something that you mentioned. And then kind of the last piece is if this was mentioned before, but some type of cadence discussion if it's an audit. If it's not every device every time, there might be a cadence that you get comfortable with setting, right? And
Yep.
what I was hearing is maybe it's once a month, once a quarter. You'll be able to kind of identify and adjust as you get that data that you keep talking about. So I just wanted to pack that up on a couple quick summary points because there's really good nuggets in there. So the second thing is documentation. We've heard it, pictures are worth 1,000 words. So we find a lot of power and we hear a lot of powerful stories of what departments can use with these borescope visuals. Jenny, tell me a little bit about your documentation process. How do you get these pictures, videos, whatever you're using for visuals to drive some of that documentation?
So we do it kind of two different ways. And again, there's so many ways that you can develop your own internal process. It's not, it has to be X and has to be Y. So the first way that we do it is we use it as part of our standard documentation when we're reprocessing an endoscope that it has passed its verification of the manual clean. So I know on every scope that we reprocess, and we use our instrument tracking system Census, we're very elevated with integration into that. So they mark, did it pass its residual protein test? And then yes, it passed its internal inspection and its external inspection. And so if it's a complex scope where there's a couple of different things on that, maybe it has an elevator, there's again some additional documentation. And that's just justification and the techs are proud, honestly, to click that. This is correct. Again, it gives them that. It doesn't take a lot of time. I mean, the time added, a borescope inspection truly takes us 30 seconds if there's nothing in there. It doesn't add a lot of time to the documentation or to the reprocessing or of this. It can be very quick. So part of it is just that standard. And I know of different places where they record it. It's a log, it's a manual thing. It's just whatever works for your organization. The second part of this is having the data of the image, the video, and that we only record for us, we only record if there's a defect. So if it's clean and it's fine and it passes, we trust that tech to say it passed. If there is a defect, they are taking a picture of it. And again, sometimes it's a phone, it's a camera in the department that takes a picture of the screen. Sometimes they can download that and put it onto the device. They can attach it into some of the instrument tracking systems. Again, there's lots of ways you can do that. Some send it straight to an email to the people who are going to be in the next steps of the process with the scope. So there's not a have to or a must or only way you can do it, but that power of that photo or that image is so, especially when we work with our vendor partners or we're talking or elevating it up to maybe an interdisciplinary team back to a physician. this is the defect we found in it. There is no power like having that image. When we send it in for repair, we can say, this is what we want repaired, and we actually stick the printed copy of the picture in with the scope when we send it back to a couple of our vendor partners or the OEMs, just so they know, because not every OEM is using Borescope or is part of their inspection process. Some do, some don't, more do now that we've come in contact with, but it's just helpful to say, this is what I really want repaired. It just is transparency in the data.
Yeah, there's a ton of data points. The more data, the better is what it sounds like, and how you manipulate or change that, use that data for change can be really powerful. So really not a matter of if, but more when you'll find something inside of a lumen with a borescope, right? We'll find something that, and those are opportunities. Those are not challenges. Those are opportunities for some change. Jenny, tell me about how does your team have a plan? What's that plan look like? How do you develop it on what to do when you find something?
I want to reiterate for those who don't have borescopes, and I think I would challenge everybody who has a borescope to disagree with me. It's not a matter of if you're going to find something, it's a matter of when. The scopes, just by design, with the soft, rubber, soft bodied, and you're putting, insertion tube, and then you're putting sharp instruments down them, and they're curved and bendy. Like it's impossible just by design, and they're designed great, and they're a great medical device. And, but there's so many opportunities to damage that inside channel, and they're complex. That's why they're high risk. And, but what they can offer for patient safety, we have to take care of them and do what we need to do. So I just want to say that it's not if there's going to be stuff, there will be stuff. It's just like your instrumentation, it goes out defective. Same with scopes and flexible endoscopes. Our first line of defense, our process. Our first line of defense is our technicians. They are those frontline experts. And I didn't know how to train them. I didn't know what everything we would see inside our flexible endoscopes looked like when we started. We had no idea. We had like one little reference from one researcher up in Canada, and then some of Corey Ofstad's data. And again, we tried to find this at conferences and different things, but we were finding it and identifying it on our own. But to make it really simple, the technicians know what right looks like. You know what defect-free looks like. So anything that is different than that is a defect. Then we have to come up with a category, how do you categorize it? What is it? What does it mean for patient safety? Is it still okay to use? Is it not? Is it a scratch? Is it a gouge? Is it retaining? Is it a discoloration? Like, we've had to work through that, but now there are tons of references out there and different partners that have that data for you. And those of us that are using borescopes have that data and can help with that as well. But it's pretty easy for the technicians. They know what right looks like, and they know what it doesn't look like. And so it's as simple as that to pull it. If it doesn't pass, their process is when they do a manual clean, they'll do their verification of clean, their inspection, again, 2-part residual protein and internal channel inspection, and of course the outside inspection of 2. That's called for and already known, so I don't want to exclude that third part of it. But if any of those fail, especially the internal channel stuff, then they re-clean it. They fail it, they re-clean it, go through a full manual clean again, do again a repeat residual protein, visual inspection, depending on which one fail. If it passes, great, they resolved it. It was something that came out of the scope. They've got it resolved. They put it in use. If it fails, they pull it. They stop that line. They say, this isn't right. There is a defect here. And then they pass it on to the next part of the process. So the first one is the empowered technicians, the skilled technicians, to know what that is and isn't. Second is somebody in your department, and I don't know who it's at for different departments. Somebody in your department is that next step, that repair person, your instrument specialist, your educator, your supervisor, maybe the manager. It depends on the size and your scope, but somebody takes that defective instrumentation and sends it out and does something with it, makes a determination. Can it be repaired? Does it have to be sent in? That's the person it goes to next in our department. For us, that is our instrument specialist. We have 2, one at each campus of our main campuses. And again, they do surgical instrumentation and our flexible endoscope. Stuff that needs to go in and out for repair, they have the picture that the technician sent them when they get the scope that they're questioning, and they will look through that and say, nope, this is something that we're monitoring this. We can watch it. We'll make a note on it. Yes, that is a full gouge. We need to send that in for a channel replacement. That discoloration is in the lining, not behind the lining, between the different parts. Like, they know some of that history. So they're the experts on kind of what that is in the scope that they're seeing, and if it needs to get sent out or if it's kind of safe. We've determined that it's safe to use. Again, there's no resources or guidelines out there that are going to say you have to send this in here and you don't have to send this in here. That is one thing you're going to have to lift on your own. And there's parts of it that are a gray area, but there are some things that are just, yes, you have to send it in. Next in line would be your leadership. So that could be, again, if there's a question about that and it's not a simple send in, or maybe it's just a notification up, I'm sending this in, this is the damage, this is what it's going to cost, this is why, and maybe I need to approve that, or different things like that. But sometimes they're stuck on a question and they ask me, and so then we'll come and we'll have an interdisciplinary kind of team conversation internally. Sometimes that even elevates up to our larger interdisciplinary team. We have had a conversation with a physician. We had back-to-back EUS patients. We had one EUS for that type, and they were doing biopsies in between. After the first procedure, there was a flap hanging across the inside of the channel. We actually asked the physician and said, we had a picture and said, this is what's in here. This flap is hanging out. It had a slice of the lining. And he made the decision that he was not going to use it because he couldn't guarantee that he would miss that flap and not inject some of that into the patient when he was doing the biopsy. It was his call. So sometimes it is elevated up to that level. And again, we pulled that out of service, but because we were canceling a patient that was here, that's at the time where we had to elevate it up. But we had the data and everybody felt comfortable making that decision for safe patient care. So that's the power of using this real time on some of those complex procedures and complex things. But that's our overall plan. Is that kind of what you wanted to know?
Yeah, I love it. That was super helpful. I mean, I think my big takeaway is that, yeah, there certainly are other stakeholders. We're not in this alone. The other piece is that, data to those conversations is important. Visual data is maybe very even very powerful to help those conversations with other stakeholders. So, yeah, thanks for that. That was perfect. I guess go ahead.
I want to say though that it's also powerful with your OEM or your vendor partners. So there's one manufacturer OEM who we've discovered puts a little red mark on the inside of the channel between the lining and the interior channel and the outside of the scope. They put a red dash in there. So we were inspecting it, we'd get it back, and all of a sudden there's this red thing in this channel that we didn't know what it was. So we know what that looks like now and which vendor does that or did that in the past. Another one uses, some different ones use a lubricant to put in a new insertion channel, but it's like a black powder. Well, here we're looking in here and there's all these little black specks down, but they're foggy and they look like they're not like on the inside, like a pinprick and debris and discoloration. That's normal. That's scope. So we can say this scope has these, this is this, and we can document it. So we can do that without sending it back. We could send the OEM a picture or the vendor or the repair specialist a picture and have a conversation and keep that scope in use too. So it kind of goes both ways.
Super, super helpful. Last piece here that we have in here, champion. I mean, talk to me a little bit about it. I know this is a tool. Tools sometimes take extra, learning and education. Do you assign a champion in the department? And if so, how do you kind of land on that person?
You do. I would recommend it. We do, and it has been just instrumental. So we actually have two champions. One I've talked about, that person who is that champion on the damage and what they're seeing. So again, that's probably the person making that determination if it's going in and out for repair. That's on the findings. The second person is who in your department is going to kind of own the technology, be the resource, set it up, be the super user, be the person who works with the vendor, does the keeps the technology up going, if it breaks or it does this, or sets it up so it's integrated with your technology if you want to integrate it into your instrument tracking system. For us, we're very blessed, and we lifted a position. We have a full-time compliance and application analyst. in our sterile processing department, given our scope and size and what they can bring. That person, along with he owns our technology, so like he is the Borescope person that Andy usually talks to at our organization. His name is Matt Strand. But he also helps us with all that data and analytics around what that borescope is telling us. So for him, and this would have, usually maybe fall on a sterile processing manager. So again, it can be anybody in the department. You don't have to have this special position to do this, but it's all of that data, again, that you get from that borescope. What do you do with it? How do you impact it? This is kind of that full circle moment. How do you take it back to your other key stakeholders? How do you say this was the root cause of this event? So we look at, whether it's him and I or just him, those trends around the data that you get out of the borescope. How do you pull that data? How do you document that data? Is it by procedure? Is it by technician? Like, what is that telling you? We actually have a scope repair dashboard with all of our information. How I know how many times each scope has went out for repair, what was the root cause of that repair, what we associated that to. So I can speak to analytically budget and purchasing power and infection control, and going back and talking about adverse events or contaminated items and really making an impact on that. It's about that data, and so that's who we have. We have two champions, and they're both equally important, but we couldn't, it's so powerful to actually do all of the analysis and speak to and have that full circle moment back to your interdisciplinary team. Data is the most powerful tool that the borescope will give you, and it allows internal improvements, retraining of technicians. This one's failing, this device isn't working, we're seeing damage in from surgery, so it's cost containment, productivity targets. I know how many times when I clean a EUS scope I have to reprocess it twice because it fails. Well, that's worked into my productivity. So again, that data is powerful, but it also impacts industry and large scale improvements. And it gets me to do this today, which is bringing education and information to other sterile processing partners in the across the world, which is so cool, which again impacts safety and patients, because the patients are always at the center.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's, I'm seeing a couple questions coming in. So I think let's get through this quick poll real quick. We'll zip through the next couple slides and then hit the really good questions, because I want to make sure we have time for them. Mm-hmm. So how often are you performing borescope inspections? I know we have a crew that's not quite there yet on using borescopes. That's totally fine. But for the ones that are, let's take a few seconds here and just get through what some of those results are. And I am seeing in the chat that some people are having some challenges either clicking on that, but we'll hopefully get some of these results and updated. All right, so far the responders, there we go. Every device, every time, predetermined cadence audit tool. Love it. Very helpful to hear. Okay. Maybe some of this info will change at next year's Flex Lab, Jenny, after all your help talking through your process. All right, so let's quick talk about what to look for. The permutations of what a borescope can find are really endless. I mean, I know Jenny could speak to that as well. What we're trying to do though is make this easier, more manageable. And I can't, sit here and tell you exactly what you're going to see, but I can, with fairly good confidence, tell you that it's going to fall under one of four categories, and they all start with the letter D. So debris, something in there that does not belong. Damage would be some lumen that's not in its infancy state where it can't arrive to you. There's some kind of damage that happened inside the channel. Discoloration or staining may be another way. So common things could be residual chemicals or even rust are some of the common findings. And then the last thing being droplets, but that could be really any kind of moisture. So any four of those Ds, we want to just provide you with a tool to help not make that overwhelming, but like Jenny said, with a little bit of time, you're going to know what you're looking for, and more importantly, mainly know what's not right. I want to take a quick second. Industry is obviously part of this solution, and I want to let you know that industry is listening and hearing and working on a lot of stuff that we think will be helping in short order. So I think one thing that we do here is that once you see this stuff with the borescope inside the lumen, you really can't unsee it. And that's not designed to be a scare tactic, but like I said, an opportunity for some really powerful change. I think that what I want to focus on is here's just a little visual. There's, AI is a buzzword, artificial intelligence. There's certain things in the works with multiple companies, which will be really cool solutions to help assisting operators use borescopes, alerting technicians specifically on where to look and what they might be seeing. Simplifying the process. Jenny talks about how it took her some time. It wasn't overnight, right, Jenny?
Mm-hmm.
It took some time, but simplifying this process to help you get this data, organize it, and keep it in a way that you can utilize it for change, improvement. So simplifying the process, assisting the operator, and organizing this important data that can help drive the change. So I wanted to share with you so that there's a good positive vibe going out of this, that there's stuff still in the works, that the improvements are coming from all angles. Jenny, we talked about a lot of stuff here. Help us kind of wrap up and take us home on just what's next. How do people wrap this information and use it towards change in their departments?
Very simply, include your partners, your interdisciplinary team, IP, regulatory, other leadership around their data. Leverage your own data. Again, surgical site infections, surveillance culturing, cleaning efficacy, scope failures. It's there. You just have to find it, and that other team should help you look at that. And some of it is easy to look at, and you can leverage even if you're by yourself. It truly is. You don't need this big team. It doesn't need to be all these data points. Maybe you pick one thing and start there where your highest risk is. Maybe where you've had the most gaps or reported quality events, that's where you start. Launch your plan for your staff. Please make it easy and simple, concise. I would highly recommend starting small. I saw the comment from Lori on this seems overwhelming for a standalone ASC. It doesn't have to be. It could be as simple as it's on the wall after your sinks before you pass it through. It can be very simple. And ASCs are actually very easy to lift this in versus a full-fledged, hospital with a complex scope platform. Flexible endoscopes and more of the complex ones. Our ASC finds it super easy to do, when it's just our outpatient endoscopy area. It's super easy there, and it can be that simple. So just please start small. Just think about the possibilities, leverage your data, and that's the last thing. Just get started. It's so impactful to patient safety, to empowering your sterile processing teams and technicians to do the job they want to do, so they can guarantee that their name is on something that is safe for a patient. That's what they want. That's what we all want. That's why we're in this industry. So this is a powerful tool, as simple or as complex as you want to use it, or as small or as big as you're able to. But I would really encourage you, if you're not, figure out one way that you can start with one thing somewhere, to give your techs the tools that they want to do the job that they want.
Okay. Well, I think we left a little time for Q&A.
Yeah, nice job, guys. Figured I'd hop in and join the discussion, since there were some really good points that you highlighted. I think one of the things, as you both mentioned, is when you have these advanced surgical instruments like scopes, like robotics, that are out there to really make the patient's experience much better. They're less invasive, but there's the other side of it. There's the damage, there's the cleaning, there's the things that we don't, or that the patient doesn't see, that sometimes aren't really taken into account, especially now that we've begun crossing membranes and using these for more advanced procedures. So I think that the use of a borescope and these advanced inspection devices and procedures, and adding them to the process, is extremely important. And so one of the things I wanted to touch on is, I did see some of the poll questions and answers. with a department that may not have the resources, or that they really would like to implement a borescope, they just don't have the financial backing. We talked about the data piece, obviously, which is going to help elevate your cause for the use of a borescope. But Jenny, I think you would probably be the one to answer this, is making the case to leadership and decision makers as to why this is such a critical piece to the scope, cleaning, disinfection, overall inspection process, just the overall workflow. What are some pointers, I guess, would you throw out there to departments looking to implement this?
I would say twofold. One, look at your defects. If you had an event that hit a patient, be at the table, do part of that RCA. Figure out if there was debris that fell, a stent was left in a scope that didn't deploy appropriately, and they went to use that on the next patient, because you'll brush right by a stent. You will, if a stent is left in an ERCP, you will brush right by it. If it's lodged in there, it's not necessarily going to come out. So, but you could see it. So again, say you have that instance. I can guarantee if you've run complex things in surgery and endoscopy things, you've had something hit a patient. Dig into that, find the root cause. Then you can go back and say, we couldn't do this part of our job because we don't have the tool to look inside. And that's kind of the second part is, it's not a must in AAMI ST91, but there is strong language in there, and it's there for a reason. And so don't be afraid to look at that regulatory. When we started our program, our infection preventionist put ST91 on a table, had myself, our surgical and procedure leadership, regulatory at the table, and said, this is the recommendation and we need to be as compliant as we can. And out of that came the discussion around looking inside those channels and the language really wasn't in there much, in the previous version. It's much stronger now. And with some of the data that's coming forward. So upper levels pay attention to regulatory. They pay attention to, it doesn't have to necessarily say must, but if it says should or recommended, and you can tie it to real events that are hitting your patients, that's where you're going to have your impact. And a borescope is not that expensive. I mean, honestly, there may be $5,000-$6,000, which you're talking about what's a patient adverse reaction, what's a surgical site infection cost the organization, you're talking 100, and then if you even push on what that means for risk to the organization, it puts on your Medicare payments changing because of your surgical site infection risk. Like, there are ways that you can leverage that data and put it into perspective, where in a surgical budget, $5,000 is pennies, right, on a multi-million-dollar budget. So it's important to show the risk and tie it to a real event that happened. That's why we do an RCA on every compromised sterility event, every adverse reaction that a device or an instrument is used on, because I want to be at the table and see why.
Yeah, very, very good points. And, I always go back to the idea or the statement is, you can't clean what you can't see. You can't sterilize what you can't see. You can't fix what you can't see. So if you've got this long tube, this scope tube, and you're just hoping that your brushing process is working, or that the surgeon wasn't basically dinging everything up with jabbing sharp instruments through there, and there's other debris. I mean, I think there's such a large case for this, that you really need to have that visual piece to be, and that adds to the data side of things.
I paint a picture for them very simply. I'm like, everybody knows about cutting board safety at home and why you should use a rubber cutting, or, a plastic cutting board. Okay. So I say, you have your plastic cutting board, you make a cut in it, you've got debris in it because you're cutting meat or chicken. I said, then you fold it into a tight tube that's this long and you put it in the dark. And then is your brush going to clean where you folded it up over itself? Is that going to be clean? Are you going to have bacteria living in there? And then the light bulbs start going on. So I don't say it quite that way, but I do say it that way. Like, with all respect, like, I have to put it in context because they just don't understand our world. And this is why it is a should. This is why we should be doing this for our patients. Absolutely.
Well, let me touch on a couple of questions that we have from the audience, and we had some really good ones. So thank you, everybody out there. When implementing the borescope, and this is another one for you, Jenny, did this add much time to your cleaning process, or is that irrelevant since it's so important to patient safety? I think we just talked about it.
If it honestly, it adds 30 seconds to a minute. And even if I'm pushing turnaround, it takes longer to dry the scope or to do whatever. I mean, in a hour-long cycle or process, 1 minute isn't going to matter. You know, it's not make or breaking that. So it didn't add time to that. Where it does add time is you will see the failures and you have to do another clean. But you should be. That's our goal. That's what we're trying to do, to have that safe device. So either the technicians get better or then we have a defect in there. You know, my technicians have an internal competition about who has the better, least amount of defects and highest, you know, lowest residual protein. Like, they want to do a good job, and we all do. That's why we're here. So it gives them that tool to do that.
Right. Yeah. You know, because if you go down that path, we talked about this earlier, you miss one stage, or there's an infection or a bug that lives on in the scope, ends up in the patient, then it's a bigger issue. And then it's just a repeated cycle. So if you have that workflow built in there, I think that you're going to manage the process much better. And adding a little bit of extra time is going to alleviate time in the long run. I think you're going to end up speeding up the process more or less. Yep. So, Andy, I'll throw one at you. I think we all have, in sterile processing, there's the issue of real estate, right? There's not the room, or people don't have the area to set up an inspection station for their borescopes. So if, you know, say the department is challenged with space, what would you recommend, or do you have some solutions to that? Just what, you know, based on what you've seen, and both of you guys can throw in on this.
Yeah, well, Jenny's going to have some good feedback too, but I would actually, let me see if I can click us back to that slide to give you a visual. But yeah, every workstation looks different. I understand that. That's just a reality. I would say, first of all, just take a quick look at how important do you think the Borescope workstation is and should be. That'll also dictate how much effort you're going to put into making space for it. It does require some space, but I would also look at integrating it with other parts of your process, right, Jenny? So if you got a computer already at a workstation, you know, maybe there's ways of looping in with that computer and monitor that are already there. Maybe there's ways to just eliminate some of that extra space needed for a borescope and just integrate it with some of the other processes. So that'd be the first thing that I'd say. The second thing is, look at what kind of devices you're going to be inspecting at the workstation. So that also might dictate how much space is needed. If we're doing a bunch of shorter lumen devices, I know we're talking just flex stuff here today, but that might dictate also how much space you might need for the inspection process. But Jenny, what do you got on that?
It truly, it doesn't, unless it doesn't take much space, especially if you have some stuff existing already. It's this thin, it goes inside that stuff, you know, so as long as you have a safe place for it to hang, you know, our one that we did on the clean side, like, it's next to our heat sealer, it's right by the window, like, it's right there, it's a little thing that attaches, you know, so you can see I just needed room for the thing to strap onto one of my instrument table arms, and then again the monitor there if I didn't want it at one workstation tying it up. So it's, you know, it's on a shelf in the back. It's super simple and small.
Awesome. Well, and I think the important piece is making sure that it's out there and that it's visible and that it's part of the workflow. It's actually worked in and everybody utilizes it, and it doesn't differ from shift to shift from, you know, whoever's there. It's part of that entire process. So
it's your standard of care.
Yep, exactly. All right. Well, I think that is a great way to end it. I want to thank both of you guys for being on with us.